Hey, long time no talk. Well, I have so much to catch you up on, so I thought I would just do a little life update, manifestation update, big announcement update. I don't even know where to begin. So if you're listening to this on the podcast or you're watching this on my YouTube channel, let's just call out the big elephant in the room. I literally did not post anything since the first, kind of manifesting vlog I did to share you, I believe is my last podcast or post. And while yes, I wish I was more on top of it, and I have so many episodes in the vault with incredible guests that I am going to be sharing with you, I also really wanted to honor what I talked about last time. And I have been really practicing what I would preach to my clients when it comes to manifesting my own dreams and desires in this next evolution. And I really believe that for this next evolution that, we were talking about last time, where, postpartum and post Hudson, and also just in this era of really honoring my acting and honoring, the other creative ways I express myself in addition to my spiritual work and my coaching work, is to be following my desire. And one of the things that I had mentioned last time, and oh my God, I have so much has happened in a month. I feel like April was like time traveling. So much got done, and I'm so excited to share because I think so many things moved after I had done my last share and kind of let you know what I was going into it. So feel free to go back to that if you're like, what in the world is she talking about? But one of the things I had mentioned was really saying that instead of focusing on what I was not going to do, I was just focusing my energy on what I was going to prioritize. And so that is something that for me, when manifesting, had been something that comes up for me. And I sabotage sometimes in that way, where I focus so much on in order to do that next thing, I have to get rid of that or cut that or cancel that. And I was like, well, what if it's, it's not about focusing on the old, it's focusing on building the new. And when I'm working with people, when I'm working with clients, whether it is on manifesting something or starting, a new business or a new project, or it's even just food wise, right? Starting healthier habits. I'm always focus on the positive thing that you want to be incorporating. So for me, it was just allowing myself for the first time in probably over a decade to make acting and to make my, my film, TV work my priority, to showing up for auditions, to doing, just the due diligence to take interviews, get a new agent, and prioritize that instead of, off the gate focusing on the question of, well, what about all of my whole spiritual coaching business and my books and all this other stuff, right? And the podcast. And so that's kind of, where one of the things I think I mentioned in that last vlog was that I was just going to focus on putting it first and just see where the chips kind of fell into place. So one of the things you can see how they fell into place was that I just let, the podcast and YouTube and newsletter, and I let some things just kind of fall to the wayside so that I could really prioritize getting some momentum. And it worked. It worked whoa. The first thing I was focusing on was sending out all these emails and getting meetings for new agents. And I did end up signing with an incredible agency. I was so blessed. I had so many different meetings. I must have had almost 10 different meetings, talked to some incredible folks. I didn't honestly even have like a bad meeting. Like everybody I met was absolutely lovely, and it really, was a tough choice for me to end up with who I ended up with. But again, of course, I meditated on it, I trusted my intuition, and I had a feeling, and I feel really good about my choice. So we are signed with a new agency, and I still have my manager who I love and I want to keep her. and in the span of just this past month, when, context, because I know not everybody that listens to this, most of you listening to this are not in the entertainment industry, right? You're here for my spiritual stuff. And I hope you can see that this is like all connected, right? I want to share this part of my journey with you guys because I'm a big believer that like we teach by how we live, and we teach by how we do things. And so I am sharing this not because I'm trying to brag about like how much I manifested in a month, but I want to show you that there is proof in the pudding that like, these tools and these, these suggestions and these things that I'm doing, they have really yielded dividends for me this past month. And the main thing being, in addition to like my regular manifestation practice, right, of like visualizing and fear clearing and whatnot that I talk about, I really have just been focusing my energy on building the new and not trying to give energy to anything else at this moment, and just kind of letting it float up as it floats up, and then deciding, does it feel aligned? And I have a big announcement around that towards the end, but I can tell you that what felt really good was not forcing that clarity. And I think so many of us, right, we want clarity like before we begin. We want to know how it all, works out, or how it all fits into pieces before it begins. But you can't. It's like, even I think I brought up one of the fears that I had to like work through around this was like, okay, well, what happens when I book something? What happens like with childcare for my son? My husband has a demanding job. Like, how do I arrange it? Right? We don't have family like close by that's available to watch him all the time. And I booked 3 different films this month, or since whenever that recording was, but I think it's been about a month. And I had to film long days in LA, was back and forth, and you know what? We figured it out. I mean, divinely, there were some days where my husband had flexibility, so he just stayed home with Hudson, and it worked out amazing. There were other days where, my husband was home with him for some period of the time, and then we had sitters help us out that we've trusted, that we've used. There were times where, I was able to go in a little bit later into the day so I could do like the morning shift and trade off. And it just worked. And it was one of those beautiful examples of sometimes like when we want something and we're manifesting something, it's so easy to think of like all the ways it's going to be complicated and all the ways like, I don't know how it's going to work. But at the end of the day, we just need to trust. And I think I talked about this in the last video as well. One of the exercises I did do, because that was a fear that was really real and really coming up for me, and I knew it would block a manifestation, was I did talk about it with my husband. I did brainstorm some kind of strategies, and he also just reassured me like, hey, when it happens, it'll be a happy problem and we'll figure it out. And he was true to his word. And that is, I think it's being open to creative solutions, right? And not shooting yourself in the foot before you even try, right? So that was really exciting. So I think the combination of me really allowing myself to fully focus on the acting and just like be in that energy really helped me take this huge leap, not just in, booking auditions and getting auditions during a time right now where like so many people in the industry are just talking about how it's crickets and it's, it's slow and all of that. And I'm not saying that that's not like, categorically, a true observation for like what's going on as a whole. But I think it's a perfect example of like we can create our own momentum, and we like the energy that we put out there is going to be reflected on us. And I'm in this space right now with acting and with this where I'm really happy to work on all sorts of different projects and do all different kinds of auditions. And it's okay with me. Like, some of the auditions I do are for, like I don't want to say nothing filmed because that seems like awful, but like, nothing like notable that's going to be like on Netflix probably, right? And then there are other things that are like for like legit shows on Amazon Prime. And one of the big manifestation announcements you might have seen is that I ended up doing stand-up for the first time this past week. And what you may or may not have realized from that little like post about me doing stand-up for the first time was that I was actually inspired by a pretty big comedy audition for a major network. And I had to write and perform my own stand-up skit. And it was just, one, so much fun. But two, also I think a perfect example of how sometimes the universe just like gives us these opportunities, and we decide how we're going to rise to the occasion. And I literally had this moment when I was preparing for this audition, and it was a lot of work to, write, stand up from scratch, perform it. I, reached out to all sorts of resources that I had, people to like help give me like some feedback, and I had this moment of just realizing that like in a different energy, in a different mindset, in a space where I was still like fully focusing on, my other work, I would not have had the space to show up for like the growth and the gift that this audition was. And because I was like, it's okay. Because one of the things I also want to just be clear or share about is that like as I've been going through this month, it's not like I don't have a voice in my head that's like, Cass, you haven't posted the next podcast. Or like, Cass, you didn't post anything on Instagram today. Or like, Cass, like whatever, right? What are you going to launch next? Or like, you should let people know you could take clients or whatever, right? I have all those little voices in my head from just like being in the habit of working in a certain way for so long, right? And so I'm actively like rebuilding those patterns and having to say like, no, you know what? This is my priority this week. I got served this gift on a silver platter by the universe for something I've been wanting, and I'm going to show up fully for it. And my like kind of magical caveat has been when I'm excited and inspired and I want to share something, I'm absolutely going to show up and post something on the podcast, and I will upload that interview when I have some spaciousness and it feels like the aligned good thing to do. But I'm just not available to be forcing myself to deprioritize the thing that I'm really desiring in that season, in this moment, to like check a box that ultimately, like, who are we kidding, is more for like, the version of me that thinks things need to be posted on a certain day or whatnot, right? And in reality, like, you guys all go about your lives and then you see a new episode posted and you see it and you go about your lives, and if you don't get an email from me for a month and then you get an email, great, right? I honestly think all of us would probably be served more if people just, created things when they felt called to create things and didn't like feel like they just had to be these like machines, right? But that's neither here nor there for this podcast. And so It was just such a beautiful exercise. I had so much fun. I think I'm going to be doing a lot more stand-up. I have always felt, I think just from giving talks as myself for my books and, spiritual talks, I feel really comfortable in front of a crowd and on mic. And I didn't know how I would be feeling, like saying jokes. But I think because I have a very comforting, comfortable energy on stage, it was easier than I expected and really exhilarating. So hopefully more open mics in my future. And yeah, I think I'm trying to think if I missed anything. No, that's the acting update. And I think that's, I'm really, really proud of the progress that I've made in just that month. And again, it just shows that where your focus goes, energy flows, and allowing it to be. And so one of the other things that we'll get into now that is also a big part of this announcement and this podcast and this little update is that as part of this, the past couple weeks, one of the things, I was in New York. Oh, I don't even know if I told you guys this. Did I tell you guys? I don't know. But what came up, actually, I think it came up after our last update, was so much tea, right? I am doing a revamp. I got asked by my publisher. They emailed me. It's been almost a decade since my first book, Eat With Intention, came out. And they had emailed me and said, hey, we've always loved this book. And we just feel like it was so ahead of its time. And so we want to republish it and modernize it and just, give it a chance to shine, in a time when people are just going to get it and get how powerful these recipes and these meditations and this process for connecting to your body wisdom is. And so this was literally out of the blue, total left field. I didn't pitch it. I wasn't even thinking about it. I've only worked with this publisher for that first book. So I was okay, sure, put this on the platter for me. And it felt really aligned, of course, because, since having my son and postpartum, I've been cooking so much again. And I mean, I meal prepped all my stuff, before I had my son, and then now cooking for him as he's trying foods and stuff. So it felt very cosmically aligned. And I was in New York on, gave myself a little creative retreat because my parents are hanging out with Hudson. And I was working on some of these edits for this next edition. It's going to be coming out in January 2026. And I was just thinking about how I actually had this concept right after I wrote Eat With Intention. And I was like, is it a book? Is it the brand? I don't know what it is. And it was called You With Intention. And essentially it was that holistic next step, right? Where Eat With Intention was really about your body and your food with intention. And I was like, my brand is really you with intention. It's how do we live every aspect of our lives with intention? And how do we not just manifest and call in these things we desire, but also consciously curate our lives? Everything from being intentional about how you, place your food on your plate to, lighting a candle before you go to bed and, journaling to how you pick out the clothes that you wear and how they make you feel to, how you intentionally engage in your relationships or your marriage, right? It's all about everything and how you do everything with intention and how that all creates a magical life. Because you're really putting your creative expression on every, fingerprint, every facet of your life. And so this came back to me and I hadn't thought about it since, almost a decade ago. And it felt so right in this moment where I'm really feeling a reclaiming of my identity, of the quote unquote Cassandra Bodzak identity as an actress, as someone that, yes, is an author, yes, is a spiritual coach. And, I love sharing all my intentional mindfulness tips and tools. And also, I do have this creative passion, and I will be continuing acting and probably also doing some screenwriting and producing and stand-up comedy now, who knows? But it just really feels like my identity has expanded, and it's so much more than the just like self-help kind of Instagram and spiritual coach and manifesting book author. And I wanted to reclaim my name for me. I wanted to reclaim my name to now showcase not just all those like career facets that are part of me, but also just like me. I think especially, with Hudson and now it's like there's more like kind of family and home centered stuff I want to be sharing, because it's just a bigger part of my life. And I've always shared a bit about my travels, but so the long and the short of it is that it came to me that I'd love to now create a little bit of separation and have my spiritual courses and my manifestation work and my intentional living brand that has lived under my name for so long now live under this other name, You With Intention, which I really love. And I feel like it's funny because I know that it's a little backwards from a lot of what we're taught in branding, a lot of what some marketing people would tell you, right? We're all like, oh, we're all our own personal brand, and we are, yes. And I'm a big believer in energy. And there are some things in business and in life where you have to just trust the energy that you're feeling around something and how something sits with you energetically. And for me, even though I know that like you could argue against it in a lot of ways business wise, but energetically, it feels really good to give that part of me a beautiful container called You With Intention under its own brand that can soar and be its own thing and still have all of those, things that you've loved in the past, but have that just be like what that's for. Have that be like the place for that, so that when, it's just me, you're with me. I don't know if that makes any sense. I don't know if I'm articulating this right. So logistically, what it will be You With Intention will have its own Instagram and, social handles and all of that jazz. Cassandra Bodzak will still live on as me, and there'll still be like some flecks of, my stuff in there, but I feel like energetically it's going to give me more permission to share with you guys more about my acting stuff and my comedy stuff and my writing and just more facets of me without feeling like, oh no, I'm sharing too much personal stuff and then they're not getting all the content and the value and the tips and the tools and all of those things that they need. So that I know like the tips and the tools and the content and all the things that you love, meditations, manifesting tips, recipes, like all of that good juicy stuff will live under You With Intention, and that's like your one-stop shop for that. And then Cassandra Bodzak will, of course, like be, connected to you. It's still me. It's still part of me and the whole like ecosystem, but it will be its separate thing. So my Substack and my newsletter which my newsletter is now just Substack. Like that's going to be my thing. I also just really don't feel connected to these like email marketing things anymore. I feel like it's just not really my vibe in this moment and in this season. I don't disagree with them as like a marketing business tool. But for me right now, the Substack will be you with intention. The Instagram is going to be you with intention for all of that. And that will be a place where I will be sharing updates, but I'll be sharing updates like this, right? Where I am, of course, sharing with you my personal life and what's going on, but I'm hopefully sharing with you in that context of, you know, hoping that it inspires you to start thinking about whatever you're moving through and whatever you're manifesting and what you're trying to focusing on in that way, right? So that you are learning and growing and inspired to live your life more with intention from the things and the tools and the stories that I'll be sharing through that. And so with that, I'm also, just to keep it all clean and cohesive, going to be changing the name of this podcast to You with Intention as well. Because I just love the name, because I feel like it encapsulates the energy that it really is to begin with, right? That's just reminding you that you have the power to create your life with intention. And I'm excited because I think it's also just even in that platform and in that brand and in that space going to give me more play to invite all sorts of different people on the podcast that maybe aren't like categorically like spiritual or wellnessy people, but have really lived life with intention and have created things, and live that kind of consciously curated, you know, magical life because they've chosen it and they've taken their power, and we can all learn from them. So you can bring in some people from the entertainment world or maybe the food world or who knows where in the world, right? Just inspiring people that are living life with intention. It's funny. It feels like it's been a long time coming, and yet I kind of came out of nowhere as well. And it's one of those things where I don't want to get ahead of myself. And I think when I look back earlier to when my business started, when, you know, I first, you know, winded up on TV and my first book deal and my first clients, and like when all of that energy was just like boom, 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 boom. One of the most beautiful things that I always come back to from that era of my life is the fact that I just kept on following the next intuitive step, the next thing that lit me up, the next thing that felt good, and I didn't overthink it and I didn't try to overcomplicate it. And so I'm really trying to step into that energy again in this like rebirth, like new era for me, with both acting and with You with Intention and my spiritual business. It's like I don't need to know what the next year looks like or 5 years looks like. I can just know that at like this juncture, this is feeling really right. And who knows where that's going to evolve and what like details and specifics will come of that. But for now, the energetic separation of really getting to like create this beautiful home to house the concentration of, you know, my spiritual and intentional living work feels just so right and so good. And also getting to more fully honor and step into and share with the world this other identity that has been here and is reemerging stronger than ever around being an actress and, you know, those kind of artistic creative pursuits that I have. Just feels really good. And I share this with you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here as part of the journey. And, you know, as I remind you, like all of our journeys look different. And I think the most important thing is that we just have to listen to our heart, and we have to keep on listening to our intuition and keep taking that next step. And I can't wait to, you know, find out what the next update's going to be in a month and what's going to happen after this? I'm like, what's the next episode like of my life? And I really appreciate you being here for the journey. If you love to support You with Intention and you want more of this content, be sure to subscribe wherever you're watching or listening to this. Send it to any of your friends. And the main thing though is that on Instagram, there will be a new handle called You with Intention. Cassandra Bodzak, my current handle, is still gonna stay, but I'm gonna have a new one, You with Intention, and that one's gonna have more of that concentrated like manifestation, spiritual, living with intention content, and it won't have as much of like the personal and the acting stuff that you're gonna find under my name. So if you're someone that's like, I really want to follow that too, please do. Please come say hi, let me know you listen to the podcast over there. I would love that. And if you're not already subscribed to my Substack, you can just subscribe for free. Right now, I just paused any paid subscriptions. It's all free. I'm just using it as a newsletter to share insights, share updates, send out little like meditations and moon updates and all of that jazz. So if you love that, definitely check out the link below. Sign up for the Substack. I'd love to have you as part of that community. I am just like personally super into Substack right now. I signed up a while ago when it first kind of like started popping, and it's just been a slow burn for me to get it going, but I really, really love that platform and what they're doing, and I have a lot of clients that are really loving it as well right now. So thanks for being here for the update. Thanks for supporting, the next evolution. And it is my honor and my pleasure to have you with me on this road. I wish you nothing but blessings until we meet again.